We've all watched a horror movie that gave us chills for a day or two. For the less courageous, they find themselves keeping an eye out for the unknown, finding it difficult to close their eyes at night. We know many of you who harbor an interest in the paranormal, seek more than just fictional thrills and crave genuine encounters. Yet, all too often, your quests are met with nothing more than manufactured scares and staged specters. Journalists are occasionally paid to fabricate stories about their purported experiences in haunted houses. What if we told you that some locations on Earth are where those terrifying tales are true? Even individuals who reject the existence of ghosts alter their minds at merely the sight of these places that make even scientists question if there's more to the part of the world we can only see physically. Make sure to brace yourselves, because in this video, we'll be taking you on a journey through these unnatural places and uncovering the intriguing and horrifying stories behind them. Aokigahara Forest, Japan. First on the list is the Aokigahara Forest in Japan, which is commonly also known as the Suicide Forest. Now, some may ask why the dense forest would be given such a terrible name. Well, that's thanks to its reputation. Since the 1950s, the forest has been known to have the highest rate of suicide. Most times, the people who have gone in there don't make it alive. And no, they hadn't been killed by a wild animal or a maniac with a chainsaw. No, instead, these people had died by their own hands. Crazy, isn't it? Those who had dared to step foot in the forest and had luckily made it out alive claim to have experienced a piercing unease and deep feelings of loneliness, which have been suspected to have compelled the victims to take their own lives. But the Japanese locals say it's more than that. According to their culture and mythology, the forest has harbored tormenting spirits that mess with the minds of the victims before they end their lives. Either way, it's all still a mystery. The Japanese government has recently stopped sharing the number of deaths in the forest as they began to go up in thousands. They have also placed warnings throughout the forest, coaxing people against suicidal thoughts. Another measure is that local shops are banned from selling items that are suitable for suicide. Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania. The Hoia Baciu Forest, also called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, has been known mostly for its mysterious sightings. Yes, these sightings first happened in 1968, when a UFO was seen above the forest and photographed by a biologist, Alexandru Sift. Since then, inexplicable events have been reported to have occurred in this area, particularly disappearance. Some years ago, it was reported that a little girl had gotten lost in the forest. And with its reputation, a lot of conclusions were drawn from her disappearance. After the locals had searched for her for many years and eventually gave up. One day, however, the 5-year-old girl reappeared, in the same clothes, in the same good condition, and the same age. It was as if not a day had passed for her, but 5 years had passed. Now, where on earth could she have possibly been for all those years? Still alive and well? The UFO perhaps had something to do with it. There are so many questions. When questioned, the girl denied recalling anything from the day she went missing. If this isn't enough to send shivers down a person's spine, we're sure the last spot on the list will certainly do. But now, let's get back to the forest. Strangely curved trees and that one circular area right in the middle of the forest, devoid of trees, aren't making things seem any more logical. Intrigued, scientists experimented on the clearing, and it was confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the soil. Yet trees don't grow there. So far, a lot of people have visited the forest, and if you're planning to add that to your next tourist destination, you might want to prepare yourself for the sensations previous visitors have claimed to have experienced while in the forest. It has been said that a mere walk through the forest has caused some to undergo migraine attacks. Some also claimed to have experienced loss of memory, and some even remembered things while in the forest that they had forgotten once they stepped out. Some also came out with burns and scratches, while others feared to have heard female voices while inside. Additionally, strange lighting has been spotted coming out of the forest over the years. This is why it is known as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Its occurrences are similar to those that take place in the strange body of water. Devil's Pool, Australia. Speaking of water bodies, we move over to the Devil's Pool in Australia. This particular site is extremely specific with its victims, which adds to the paranormal mystery of the place. Imagine an infamous death pool that kills only men. It's actually a tragic love story. A lady named Ulana is the heroine in this one. Over a century ago, it was narrated that the lady had been in a loveless marriage to an elder in her tribe. She lived with her husband, hopeless of any love in her future. Well, that was until another tribe came on a tour. It was said that Ulana fell in love with a member of this tribe who was named Diga. Diga reciprocated the affection, and the two soon decided to run away together. Of course, every love story has a villain, and in this case, it was Ulana's husband and the rest of the elders of her tribe. They searched for them everywhere and eventually spotted them right at the Devil's Pool, which was still a calmer body of water at that time. Clueless about what to do next, Ulana jumped into the water to escape and asked Diga to join her, determined to leave with her lover, but sadly, the lady drowned. And this wasn't just any typical drowning. She screamed out so loudly that the boulders around her fell on her. It was horrifying. Shortly after, in 1933, a man, Mr. T. Winterbottom, tragically drowned in the water, and his body was never traced. This was overlooked, but people began to notice a pattern. Ever since then, only male, and I mean male tourists, get drowned in the water by inexplicably heavy tides. Believe in superstitions or not, this odd specification is a topic for pondering. Eastern State Penitentiary, USA. You might have guessed it yourself, we're getting into the stage of this video where things really start to get pretty creepy. The United States was known in the 19th century for having one of the most advanced prisons for severe punishment, and this was because of the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. The horror of this prison did not just begin with the eerie sightings after it closed down, but also with the horrendous way the inmates were treated while in custody. These punishments could make any person go crazy. I can assure you of that. The prisoners were tortured with isolation, which was supposed to allow them to reflect on their lives. Not just isolation, the inmates were kept in solitary confinement, and they were not allowed to see other people. The guards would use muffled boots so the prisoners wouldn't notice their movement, and when they would go out, their faces would be covered to prevent them from seeing anyone. Some other punishments included the mad chair, a chair used to cure mental illness. In what way? Restricting all movement. This prevented blood circulation, which they believed could spread mental illness throughout the body. There were so many other terrifying forms of punishment, like dunking the prisoner's head in ice and hanging him overnight, especially in the winter. Some didn't make it. Paranormal activities soon began when a notorious criminal, Al Capone, who was an inmate in the penitentiary, was driven insane in his cell. Before this occurred, Al's piercing screams were claimed to have been heard from his cell at night. He would beg and plead for a man named Jimmy to leave him alone continuously. There was no Jimmy around, and people concluded that it was probably the spirit of Jimmy Clark, one of the men he had killed in the St. Valentine's Massacre. After the closure of this penitentiary due to overcrowding, the area still didn't seem to be abandoned. Visitors claimed to have heard laughs, whispers, and even crying from the cells. There was even a lady in white who kept appearing on the second floor. She has been named the Soap Lady as her occurrences are continuous. Some other visitors, including the sci-fi ghost hunters, have shown a video of what seemed to be a man walking through cell block 12, while others had spotted a man standing at the guard tower, which is impossible as the block steps leading there have long ago fallen apart. Poveglia Island, Italy. If you think the inmates of the Eastern State Penitentiary were mistreated, then you need to take a look at Poveglia Island in Italy, the small island near Venice. The island was first associated with death and suffering in the 14th century. We had a viral epidemic in 2020, but these people in that century in Europe had the bubonic plague epidemic. But they didn't use decent hospitals and quarantine centers, no. Instead, the victims of this disease were transported to Poveglia Island. It served as their quarantine station. But these people didn't survive long. Soon after being isolated from the mainland, it was estimated that tens of thousands of people died on the island during this time. The deaths didn't end there. Guess what? The owner of the island had decided to make it a psychiatric hospital. It became an asylum for the mentally ill. It was in the early 20th century. This mental hospital was the definition of torture. Even with the poor management of the hospital, reports suggest that the patients were subjected to inhumane treatment. Things get uncomfortable from here. The doctors had carried out experimental procedures such as lobotomies. This was a method believed to have been able to cure the mentally ill. Lobotomies in this poorly managed asylum included opening up the heads of the patients and playing with the lobes in their brains. The doctor's quite a sicko if you ask me. The patients were tortured, which eventually drove the head psychiatrist insane. Like any decent decision, the hospital was closed and abandoned. However, the story doesn't end there. The locals living around them believe that the place is still haunted by the people who live there. Of course, humans are inquisitive, and paranormal enthusiasts who want to know what all the fuss is about have gone to take a look. They didn't return empty-handed. Most, terrified, came back and reported hearing disembodied screams, real screams from nowhere. While investigating, they'd spot shadowy figures. What else would one expect from a place known for its thousands of deaths? Some by torture from a terrible disease, and others by torture from a terrible, psychotic doctor. The Italian government is pretty careful about this island and ensures that no one can enter. They even made it illegal to go in there. But the curious ones still sneak their way in and report back with stories of their own. Water spirits, UFOs, mad doctors. Of course, the list doesn't end there. If this video left you at the edge of your seat, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want more, just play the next episode that comes up as a suggestion to your left.